Hello and welcome to Sentinel One and CNBC-TV18 present Defeating Ransomware, How to Safeguard Your Business. I'm your host Gautam Srinivasan, and our conversation today will focus on outlining the security landscape shaping up, understanding the attack vectors around ransomware, and the sophisticated defenses required to counter threats. So what's the situation currently? Over the last few years, ransomware has emerged as one of the most devastating and costly options in the hacker arsenal. Unlike other forms of cyber theft that often involve stolen financial or healthcare information, ransomware acts directly in front of the victim, holding their system or data hostage until a ransom payment is made. Now, recovery is difficult, so prevention is better than cure. Now, as threat actors pour their energies into developing increasingly advanced techniques to evade legacy defenses that rely on static signatures, as well as new, seemingly innovative solutions to endpoint protection, the time is now for enterprises to shore up their defenses. To outline the trends shaping up this space and the solutions and strategies that can safeguard your business, I'm joined by three leaders from the world of cybersecurity. With me are Rajamani, CPO, Sentinel One, Rick Smith, CTO, Sentinel One, and Diwakar Dayal, Managing Director, India at Sentinel One. Gentlemen, great to have you all with us and looking forward to your insights on this new security paradigm that we have. So let's start by understanding why cybersecurity matters. Raj, I'll come to you first. India is opening up again, offices are opening up, children are coming back to school, a whole lot of enterprises are all gung-ho, but at the end of the day, the question is, what are the threats that organizations need to look at right now in this post-pandemic world?
What happened with COVID was that many of us ended up working from home and sometimes even leaving cities because we didn't want to deal with the commute and the pollution, and we felt that we could work as effectively being wherever we were. And this meant that the security teams had to make sure that they were securing their endpoints because the employees were going with their laptops to small villages, small towns, and working from there. And referencing the ransomware you talked about earlier, it's such a big risk that if someone gets infected, once they get infected in a remote place, you have to actually ship the computer back in order to get it reimaged, lost productivity, or worst case, they bring something back into the network and impact a much larger set of employees as well as corporate assets. So endpoint security became much more prominent because of COVID.
Of course, expanding on some of the themes which Raj has mentioned, especially from the context of ransomware, Rick, what are the threats that organizations, in your opinion, need to be prepared for, especially when seen from a post-pandemic world perspective?
So you really want to make sure that you have the ability to restrict access. And as we see the propagation of all of these assets moving out into villages and whatnot, that's one of the key resources that we have to make sure that we understand the security posture of that asset and that we can shut down access immediately if the risk score gets too high.
All right. Let's also try to understand, where are the gaps exactly? Because every organization has cybersecurity tools. But then you open up the newspaper and then you see all these reports of cyber attacks happening, ransomware attacks happening. Where are the gaps? What's missing and what needs to be done to address it?
Unfortunately, cybersecurity has kind of been left behind, right? They're trying to keep up, but the number of devices coming on to the networks, the number of laptops proliferating out there, and most importantly, building software on public clouds. This has put a lot of risk in terms of, really how businesses are running, right? And this has, in a way, opened up so many vulnerabilities that today the world is not a safe place online, right? And if we call this the new pandemic, it is the digital pandemic. And through this digital pandemic, unfortunately, I guess a lot of CIOs and CISOs and tech leaders have tried to adopt a traditional approach to solve the problem. And that is why there is really a need clearly to kind of pivot and relook at how we address this new problem that we have here.
Absolutely. And if we look at it as an infrastructural play, right? I mean, when we talk about, say, AI and ML and automation in cybersecurity, that's seen as the promised land. It will deliver wondrous benefits. But for a lot of the viewing audience out there who want to understand what does AI actually do in the context of cybersecurity? Rick, what would you say to that?
You know, traditional methods generally revolved around signature-based approaches. That's where I'm scanning a file system, I'm taking those files, and comparing them to an existing database. That's great for anything that you've actually identified in the wild, but you know, the threat landscape, it's quick moving, it's really hard to actually capture all of that. You'll never get it done. So that leaves you exposed to the unknown world, what most people would categorize as zero-day viruses. So the next categorization of a legacy vendor took it a step further. So they said, let's deploy a sensor on the endpoint. We'll emit all the events to the cloud. We'll put an analyst team in place. They can look at all the processes and then start getting an understanding of things that don't look right. When that happens, they can react, they can remediate. But there's a human in the middle, so it's not timely. It's not as secure. This is where AI starts to come into play. So with that, we can actually start looking at the behavior of malware. The system itself can react to it and start making inferences. Not only that, there's no human involved, so the response is immediate and instantaneous.
All right, considering the barriers are coming down, especially when thinking about public cloud, Diva, let me bring you in. How will Sentinel One customers in India be able to benefit from this new strategy?
Yeah, I think this is the biggest differentiator that Sentinel One is able to provide to the market, right? That customers across different verticals, right, be it in government, banking and defense, IT, ITS and whatnot, based on their requirement for data sovereignty, right, especially around regulatory guidelines and their own data policy, they could choose to basically either host the data on-prem completely or go to cloud or go to a specific cloud, maybe like cloud in India. So this kind of gives them control, but also gives them ability to scale, where this is an ability to really embrace the world's latest and greatest cybersecurity platform without really worrying about, is my data going to be stored locally, is it going to be stored specifically elsewhere? And I think that today, as we are engaging Indian customers, they seem to see this as a very big advantage with regards to how they work with Sentinel One.
As we distill some of the talking points that we have discussed in the context of wider cybersecurity matter, let me get in all of your viewpoints on the top 3 things that enterprises need to do to stay secure. Diva, we'll start with you, then Raj and Rick.
I think there is an opportunity now to reframe, right, the cybersecurity architecture from a pandemic lens, right, or a digital pandemic lens. What it means is really to have a cybersecurity strategy in place, right? A strategy that really starts with protecting the devices. Why? Because that's the first line of defense. Protecting the cloud, because that's where your business is, that's where your data is. And more importantly, protecting the identity, who's got access to what. When you put these 3 together, right, you really see a clear vision in terms of how, irrespective of what size of business you are, you could be a 100,000 employee company, airline company, or you could be somebody who's running a shop with 200 employees. Both of them benefit from this cybersecurity strategy.
All right, Raj, your thoughts?
I talk to a lot of CISOs. I talk to them very frequently. And the top 3 concerns I hear repeatedly are ransomware, supply chain attacks, and number 3, insider threat, right? So those are the 3 types of attacks or attack vectors that most of the CISOs I end up talking to worry about every day. Now, how do you solve for this? It could be endpoint security, it could be identity security. You may need better security operations. And there are a number of those capabilities that Sentinel One provides, but it all needs to start with the strategy that Diva articulated.
Rick, your thoughts on this, from a global, from a geographic perspective?
Cloud posture management in general, core focus. Everybody should have a strategy around that. You need proper tooling to be in place there. And it needs to be complemented with good cloud workload protection. And that's often something that's missed overall. And then in addition to that, you really have to look at your entity management in terms of identities. That's the trifecta of making sure that the public cloud's available for you so that you can make that transition.